All right, good morning, everybody. My name's Steve Carefull. I'm Director with PA Consulting, and I'm Programme Director for the Argenti Care Technology Partnership with Hampshire County Council, and I'm involved in helping to run the cobots programme. So, first of all, what is a cobot? What do we mean by the term cobot? Well, it stands for collaborative robot. It could also be referred to as an exoskeleton. And there are some major advantages of approaching this from the point of view of cobotics as opposed to robotics. And the first of those is there's no need for a robotic brain, an artificial intelligence that is independent of the wearer. The cobot responds to the wearer's signals and is entirely in control of the wearer. So that's one less challenge and problem we have to deal with. The second is that the contact between the carer and the cared for can remain skin to skin when worn by a carer, and that's the context in which we'll be using it in this Pathfinder. So there are no plastic or metal robot hands to interact with fragile individuals or thin skin. And thirdly, cobots have a track record. So they're already being used in Japan reasonably extensively in two contexts. One is supporting patients to rehabilitate, maybe post-stroke, and then also in the way we're going to be using them in this Pathfinder as an aid to lifting and handling for workers. So preliminary work on this area began about 18 months ago with a small grant from the LGA and a joint project between the Isle of Wight and Hampshire and Carers UK to explore what was out there in terms of robotics that could help to address the care workforce challenge that Mark and previous speakers have outlined so clearly. Globally, we found almost 40 active developers of cobotic devices. However, most of them were focused on other industries, and only a handful were interested in the UK social care market, which frankly is a mystery to people outside the UK. In that earlier work, we also wanted to explore how the concept of robotics needs to be presented and what kind of language needs to be used around service users and carers and providers. Because as was alluded to by Jane, the term robot is quite loaded, and people tend to fear the worst and imagine that a Terminator is going to turn up to deliver care for them. However, the feedback we got when we got carers and care providers and care and service users in rooms for workshops was really powerful. I mean, it seems if you start by understanding the problems and the challenges facing paid and unpaid carers each day, they're desperate for solutions. And if that solution comes in the shape of a cobot, then so be it. They're not fazed by that at all. In one workshop, quite memorably, that I was in, a carer explained how she'd found her mother on the floor and they'd spent an hour and a half struggling to get her back up, and both of them had ended up in tears. The carer said, I could have used a robot on Tuesday to help me in that situation. No problems at all with the idea of using technology when you've got a problem that it can solve. And it's probably fair to say that nobody in any of those early workshops felt the idea of a cobot was without merit, and that was one of the things that encouraged us to take the next step forward and start looking at a Pathfinder. But we also needed to look at the paid care workforce, and we identified a range of factors the Pathfinder would need to explore, including things like training, health and safety, professional standards, and established ways of working, the kinds of things Mark's alluded to there that we're potentially going to disturb and disrupt. But also some relatively simple things that we hadn't thought of, worries that staff would have about being responsible for an expensive piece of kit, the question as to whether it would fit in the average boot of a dom care worker's car, for example. These practical factors are really quite important when you're starting to plan a Pathfinder of the sort we're running. So, what do we hope to find? Well, a key lesson from the earlier work is that it's essential to clearly identify which use cases a Pathfinder will focus on, because even slight changes in the use case can have significant implications both for the type of device that might be appropriate and the business case. For example, the right device and the business case for a husband or wife caring for their spouse at home may be very different to a device that will work well for a paid carer in a residential setting. So as we've already heard, a big challenge facing Hampshire and many other social care authorities is the cost and the shortage of paid carers in the future. And Hampshire, for example, spends £17 million a year on double-up dom care. So that's an area that we were particularly interested in focusing the work on. So in this Pathfinder, we're focusing on service users who are in receipt of paid-for care, starting in extra care and similar managed settings. And the service users will have moderate or ad hoc requirements for physical support. In other words, there won't be people who've already got an extensive array of lifting and moving hardware built into their home. They will normally require 2 carers to go and work together to move them. And in the latter part of the Pathfinder, we hope, once we've established a way of dealing with this and we've learned some early lessons, we hope to trial the device out in the community with dom care workers. So, how will we run the Pathfinder and how will it be measured? Well, we plan to deploy up to 6 cobots in different environments with different cohorts of staff and service users. Each tightly managed deployment will last up to 8 weeks to give people a real opportunity to let it bed in and become familiar. And the device we're trialling is called a Cyberdyne Lumbar Support Cobot. We have a small joint PA and HCC team working on planning, training and evaluating the Pathfinder. And we're engaged with a wide range of stakeholders, including care providers, service users, carers, care practitioners, and trade unions and regulators and so on. And we'll be gathering evidence in a variety of ways, including on-the-job observation, surveys of carers and the cared for, an analysis of data, for example, on the type and frequency of use, and the impact on workforce planning and costs. And the ultimate aim is to be able to answer the question, could a device of this kind help to address the care workforce challenge with a sustainable business case and measurable positive impacts on the experience of carers and the cared for? And importantly, we're also going to be examining the suitability of this particular cobot for the environments and cohorts and tasks we use it for. Are changes needed to this device, or would an entirely different device be more effective? And we're anticipating concluding the Pathfinder in about May next year, and we'll be reporting the results after that. Now, I appreciate that May next year is quite a long way away, so we thought you might like to see what a device looks like when worn. And we have our colleague Leslie here to show you and tell you a little about what it's like in use. So if I can ask Leslie and Mark to come back out onto the stage. Leslie modelling the Cyberdyne lumbar support device. So we're going to ask you a couple of questions, and hopefully we'll get the audience will get a sense of what the experience is like of using this device. So first of all, how does it actually work and what does it feel like to use?
So it's, I mean, like anything new, when you first put it on, it can feel quite fiddly, but it's actually remarkably simple and light, and it's actually quite comfortable once you've been wearing it for a while. So it's attached, it's got, obviously there's some around the legs, around the waist, and just under the kind of ribs. There are electrodes that are attached to the muscles on your back, and these electrodes read the signals that you send from your brain through to your muscles that kind of anticipate your movements, and that's how it sort of works. So, and I think it's important to think, I control it, it's not controlling me, but we work together in it, so you have to sort of wear it a few times to get to feel it. It's got a rechargeable battery, so it lasts about 3 to 4 hours, and you can just change the battery at the back when you need to. And I think that's it, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Leslie. Can you tell us, when you've shown this to practitioners, and what's the reaction been to them when you've let them try it on, use it, things like that?
I mean, everyone's excited and interested. There's a range of different emotions, but it's curiosity. I think the main thing is actually the care workforce are just really open to this and excited about new technology to support them. And they've been really positive around it. So from the early stages in Isle of Wight, trialling it with a care worker, he put it on and wouldn't take it off and was wearing it for hours and really felt the benefit of it. And then even just last week working in Hampshire with some of the occupational therapists and some of the care workers in an extra care facility in the training room, you know, they really felt that it was something different and they were really excited. But what they did say is you really need to wear it and let it work with you and understand the different controls, because you can move it up and down to different power for your different physical strength and things. So it was just really a plea from them, like, can we start using this? When can we start wearing this? Which is great, really.
Is there a difference because you look at it and it's when you put it on that you understand what it can do? Is there something like that?
That is so true. You really have to wear it to understand it and get used to it for your body and what it can do.
Yeah. Okay. And Steve's mentioned that it's a small group between the Hampshire County Council and PA that are running the trial, but who else is involved?
Lots of people, as you can imagine. There's a huge amount of interest from a range of different people, which is great. We've also got to kind of manage that. So in Hampshire, operationally, we're working with a number of different care practitioners, occupational therapists, ergonomists, physiotherapists, social workers, care workers, their managers, users. So there's a massive amount of stakeholders there. And then strategically, you know, we're working with regulators to look at all the different regulations around moving and handling, and how this works with that. So CQC, health and safety executive, working with kind of national bodies, the Department of Health and Social Care, and professional bodies, so the Royal College of OT. So there's a lot of interest in this and people that we're working with.
So you've mentioned that it's hard to really get a sense of what this is like until you're wearing it, and it's actually quite a subtle effect as well.
Very subtle.
We were going to do a little demo, weren't we, just to give an indication to people of what it's actually doing, because obviously from the audience it can be hard to see. So if you're going to turn to one side.
So it's a lower back support, a lumbar support.
So you're now going to let it take your weight, in effect, leaning forward, and I'm going to turn it off so you can see what effect it's having. So that gives an indication. I think, as you say, I've worn it, and you really don't get a sense of what it's going to do until you've actually got it on and you start moving and doing things in it. Just a final question then about the challenges. Now, this is quite a long-running, complex thing. I think we've already established from previous work. This is not straightforward. What are the biggest challenges you expect to anticipate with the Pathfinder?
I think just when we talked about the sheer number of stakeholders involved in just managing that engagement and everything that comes with it, and just trying to channel it in a positive way that we get the results that we need from it. So that's going to be challenging. And also just how we actually actively deploy it in a real operational setting and the challenges that come with that. And how we measure that. How do we measure the impact, of this? Because there's a range of benefits, but we're really open-minded about what they could be. So those are the challenges. Okay, thank you. Speaking of measuring, I think we're going to ask you to vote again on a question. So if we can switch to the app, it should generate that question for you. There you go. So if you can please vote. And I think if we'll just leave it to the AV guys to put the result up as soon as they've got a decent number of responses in. Okay, and there we go. So that's different.
That's very different.
So the green, which is 51.6%, a considerable role in care, that's definitely gone up from earlier in the session. And I think probably there is more universal role in care votes as well there. So there's a movement there. And I think that's borne out by our experience in the workshops, my point earlier about the importance of language around this and how you actually roll this out. Once people have an opportunity to see and try this on, and even use it in anger, lifting people and moving them, they immediately start to see the potential for this when perhaps previously they were sceptical. So that's really interesting. Thank you for that. Mark, you're going to wrap up.
Just finally, first of all, thank you for listening. I hope you found it interesting. And thank you for Leslie for coming out and being brave enough to wear that in.
I didn't want to take it off.
We'll be seen in a care setting in Hampshire soon. I think one of the things, just a couple of things I wanted to point out was firstly, this is a trial. So we are trying to understand this. So we're not just pushing this out with some sort of like bull-nosed approach saying we are doing this and this is going to happen. What we need to do is learn about this. And part of it is about learning about the capabilities of this piece of technology, but also learn about the impact on our workforce and practice and things like that. It's also an opportunity for us, again, to start to push the boundaries of what technology-enabled care is. It feeds into that ecosystem that we need to develop for the future to make it sustainable and meaningful for both people who receive care and for those who deliver care. And this is a really good example of applied innovation. And that's an approach that we want to develop and encourage in Hampshire, and I think we collectively should be approaching that in this particular way, in this sort of discovery way, as opposed to just find a solution and push it out and then find 6 months later that it's not the right one. So thank you very much. If you need to ask us any more questions, we're on stand 28. Thank you.
Thank you.